Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, the Florida Gators heading into 2025. I think it's fair to say at this point in the summer, they're the darlings for the fellas going into the 2025 year. There are not many programs where I look at these rosters. There's just not many teams that I believe in more than Florida going into the 2025 year. Now, that begs the question of what are the expectations for this football team going into 2025? And Dill, I'll start it off with this little bit of a hot take. The more and more I talk about this football team, the more and more I look at this roster, the more and more I start getting into the mindset of it's college football playoff or bust for Billy Napier and the Florida Gators. Now, that's where I want to start this conversation. But the other portion of this conversation is, all right, what do we need to see from Billy Napier to make us confident that he's the right guy for the job in Gainesville going forward? Now, there's no better way to get a feel for this conversation than hearing from the Florida fans. Please let it fly in the comment section. Not necessarily if it's college football playoffs or bust, but what do you want to see from Billy Napier and this football team to make you feel confident that you got the right head coach for the next decade? That's kind of the conversation I want to get into. Let it fly in the comment section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. To the Florida fans, it's been really fun talking this football team the last couple of months. The amount of support y'all have shown the fellas has been amazing. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, without further ado, let's start with this conversation of is it college football playoffs or bust for Billy Napier and the Gators in 2025?
I don't see it as college football playoff or bust because, frankly, if you go 9-3 with this schedule and narrowly miss the playoffs, and frankly, I think you probably give a really good argument to be in with 9-3. But let's say you get hosed, for example. I mean, you're not questioning where this Florida program's going because I look process-wise, Billy Napier's got this thing going. Like, they're recruiting really well. I know it's kind of a slow start last year, but they finished that cycle up really positively. You look at the way the young players are playing, really, really like that. You look at the way they supplement with the portal. I look at the process Florida's on. I think you're going to win very consistently for a long time if Billy Napier can keep that going. The one thing you probably a little don't want to see is one of those like real bad unprepared losses, and that's what's keeping you out. Because
that's the one question we need to see Billy Napier figure out. Because I think we've been both, even when Florida wasn't necessarily winning football games, it always felt like they were doing the right things. And like you said, they're recruiting well, but I think they're evaluating really well. I think they're developing really well. I mean, you look at this Florida Gators roster in comparison to a lot of the other programs across the country, it's a lot of homegrown talent that they've signed out of high school and now are high-level football players for Florida. So they're recruiting well, they're evaluating well, they're developing well. Like you said, they're also retaining their talent at a very high level. Like, Florida's not losing good players in the portal. They're keeping their guys out of the NFL draft, which is a massive storyline for this Florida Gators team. I mean, they got a lot of guys that should be playing on Sundays in the fall that are going to be suiting up for the Florida Gators. They've done everything right. And now I view year 4 for Billy Napier as like, you got to pay it off on the football field, and you got to be a little bit more of a consistent football team on Saturdays than what we've seen in the past from this Billy Napier coach team.
And that's 100%. Like, you definitely, again, like that Miami game, you just show up and you look totally unprepared. You can't have it. You
Texas A&M.
Texas A&M game. Obviously, towards the end of the year, they looked dialed in. They were going in, playing Ole Miss, beating them pretty good, beating LSU, like good football teams. That was the version of Florida. If they had that all year, they would have been right on the cusp. But that is, again, you've seen some real clunkers from Billy Napier in his first couple of years. They have a good enough team where I think wire to wire, they should be really good. So that'd be the only thing that would strike some concern into me is if they have a season where it's a bit more of a roller coaster.
Because it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if you do everything right in the winter, in the spring, and in the summer. Like, if you are not doing it right in the fall and kind of capitalizing on doing everything else right, it doesn't really matter. And that's kind of the frame set I'm coming in with Florida is like you've acquired a team that can compete with anybody. Like, if you told me this team is beating Texas or is beating Georgia, I wouldn't be stunned. This is a team that can beat anybody in the country in 2025 from what we see on the roster. I guess that's the point of, hey, we got to see if you can't capitalize with the roster that you have going into 2025, is it ever going to come together for you in Gainesville?
Because he can't execute the process that much better than what he's doing now. There's certainly another level they can take it to, like elite. But like right now, they're at a really high level of like program management, if you will. But you're right. I mean, if you don't win games on the field, then
and the last thing that I'll point out for Florida is it's sustainable. Like we had this conversation with Ole Miss last year, whereas like, look, I think Ole Miss has the roster to compete with anybody in the country, and they did.
Yeah.
And they didn't necessarily capitalize in the fall, but the question was always, look, can you sustain this for the next decade? Is this something you can do every single year to compete at the highest level? That still remains a question, and I would argue maybe not. I look at what Billy Napier's done at Florida and say, this is sustainable. Like what they're doing, if they continue to do this for 10 years, they're going to be competing for SEC and national championships every single year, which stands out to me because there's not a lot of programs sustainably, I would say, across the country. Now, getting into the schedule, you mentioned 9-3. If Florida does not make the playoffs 9-3, I'm going to riot. Especially if it has to do with like what we saw last year, where you're letting a team like SMU or Indiana sneak in.
It'd be tough.
Where you got to look at this team and say, not only is it a brutal SEC schedule where you're going on the road and playing LSU, on the road and playing Texas A&M, you play Georgia, you play Texas, you play some of the best teams in this conference. Oh yeah, and then your out of conference schedule includes Miami on the road and playing a team like Florida State. A 9-3 team, I think, should make the college football playoffs, and Dill, I think it will make the college football playoffs in the 2025 year, because I don't think the committee is going to want to do what they did last year, like letting these teams that had kind of cupcake schedules get in because they had better records and then lose in the first round and kind of jack up some of the entertainment value.
But also, let's be honest, like the 9-3 teams last year who were making their arguments didn't have great arguments because they had some gross losses and didn't have the schedule that looks like what's like this Florida schedule is pretty much what like Georgia played last year. And Georgia played a warpath of a schedule for sure. Georgia, if they lost one more game, I'm pretty confident was getting in. So I don't think the 9-3 teams, as much as like we just want to compare record to record, their resumes weren't going to be nearly as good as what a 9-3 Florida resume. 9-3 Florida resume would be like unbelievably good.
So, Dill, let's get into the schedule a little bit, because there's not a game highlighted in red, because I fully believe there's not a game Florida can't win. And there's not going to be a game, at least what I look at right now and say, there's not a game that Florida's like over a touchdown underdog at least in my opinion.
No.
Now, the games in purple are interesting because there are some legit toss-ups, but there's also some games in purple where I'm looking at and saying,
you threw some toss-ups on there. Like, is Ole Miss really like a toss-up? I think Florida's be a pretty good favorite in that.
On the road at Ole Miss is certainly one where you lean Florida. At home at Tennessee, especially late in the season, because I have some serious question marks about the depth of this Tennessee football team. That is certainly a game that you lean Florida, especially with the quarterback situation. And then even at Texas A&M, where I think you have to highlight it in purple because of what you saw last year, and you're going on the road to Texas A&M, one of the hardest places to play in the country. But that's also a game that roster to roster, I probably lean Florida as well.
I mean, roster to roster, the only team that really I'd almost say like feels better on paper is possibly Texas. But even
I think it is Texas
right now, like Florida, Georgia is not a huge difference in terms of like talent to talent on that roster. LSU and Miami, I'd probably say the same. Frankly, I think Florida roster is definitely better than Miami, maybe better than LSU in my opinion. So I look like even these toss-ups, like 9-3, it's very feasible, and I think that's an extremely good year for this Florida.
And Dill, should that be? So then the next question is like, should that be the expectation? Because I think it should be. Because again, the biggest thing that I want to see from Billy Napier to make me confident that Billy Napier's the guy is I want to see a consistent football team on Saturdays. And if you get that, you should get to 9-3 because you shouldn't lose to Ole Miss. I don't think you should lose to Tennessee, excuse me. You drop on the road at LSU, you drop Texas, you drop maybe on the road at Miami or Georgia.
But even you should expect to win 1 or 2 or 3 of those games. Like honestly, I kind of look like
I agree.
I just don't know that I'm penciling in any losses. So
there are 7.
See if Florida still be really tough in those big games. You don't want to just assume like they're not going to beat Georgia, not
Yeah,
going to beat.
there are 7 because this is the year where you want to see Florida come through in some of these games. Like you got 7 games in purple. I lean Florida with Tennessee. I lean Florida on the road at Ole Miss. I lean Florida on the road at Texas
And
State.
what I will say kind of encourages me is towards the end of the year last year, they were coming through in these
Yes.
games. Like Ole
Yeah.
Miss was a really, really, really good football. I feel like people don't like want to acknowledge what beating Ole Miss was last year, but Ole Miss like
Agreed.
took it to Georgia. I mean, they hammered them in that game.
Yeah.
Ole Miss was great. So I think like just that ability to get some winning feeling back into this room in Florida, where again, like a couple years ago, yeah, they had the Tennessee win and that felt good maybe, but you never really felt particularly confident going into these big games with the Florida Gators. Like
Yes.
I didn't
Agreed.
feel overwhelmingly confident, frankly, going into that Ole Miss game if I was a Florida fan, but to go pull it out in the way they did it with a hobbled DJ Lagway, like
Yeah.
I mean that those are the type of wins you need as a not young coach, but like an early in your tenure coach at one of these big dog programs to kind of get the ball rolling and make you feel like confident in those wins.
Now the story is, can you come up with those kind of wins in 2025
Like yeah.
and not drop the games you're not supposed to drop, which has been a problem for Florida and Billy Napier as well. Till I look at the first 4 games, like I look at the month of September and say, can you just go 3-1? Right? Are you 3-1 into the bye week? You're hosting Texas, is going to be a freaking awesome environment with a young quarterback in Arch Manning. We haven't seen this Florida team have momentum oftentimes early in the season.
Yeah.
What is this Florida team going to look like with what you said? A little bit of like, hey, we can go win these big football games because we know we're good enough.
And
Haven't seen
because you
that.
got DJ Lagway, because things started to turn when he took the program over.
Yeah,
And
you have a winner
I
at
just feel like
quarterback.
when you have a guy who is
Yeah,
a real premier talent at that quarterback spot, which
yeah,
Florida just hadn't had. And Graham
yep,
Mertz was good for them. I don't want to necessarily like beat him
yes,
up. Solid, but solid doesn't get you over the hump necessarily. You need
in
greatness
these
at the
games.
quarterback spot, and they finally have it with DJ Lagway. I think what he showed in that Ole Miss game, kind of on one leg, like that's got me.
That I mean, you talk about a sneaky storyline nobody's talking about is like DJ Lagway wasn't healthy last year. Like
No.
he couldn't get outside the pocket. He couldn't use his legs, which is a massive asset to this kid's game. Um, we'll close it out on this. You've done everything right. I think you have the best coaching staff that Billy Napier has had. Like I like or hate Ron Roberts. He did a great job with that defense. Billy Napier as a play caller on offense is obviously now completely under the microscope. But I think you have a really good roster. You have a deep roster. You have the right coaching staff. Culture is another thing. Like the culture at Florida is elite.
Strong.
Again, as much as we talked about Billy Napier on the hot seat and not believing in Billy Napier, though, we made so many episodes in the fall last year of who's going to be Florida's next head coach. That Florida team never stopped playing hard for Billy Napier.
That's a huge one to be able to like to stay after that Miami beating in a rivalry game in a
And
big
then
moment. But yeah, you just go battle the rest of the year and just play
yeah,
really respectable ball and never give those like again, the only one was obviously Texas, and,
and
and there was never going to be a chance when
yeah,
DJ Lagway wasn't playing.
and
That
you get better as the season went on too, which was part of it. You got everything in place, and now it's just we got to go see Billy Napier put together wins. And if you get that, though, I mean, like 12 months ago, I had so many question marks about Billy Napier in Florida, especially 8 months ago, like as we were in the middle of that 2024 season. I'm all of a sudden sitting here and like, I'm confident with Billy Napier. Now I just got to go, you go put it together on the football field. In my confidence with this Florida program, not only over the next couple of years with just DJ Lagway, but as a program over the next decade, shifts. Got to go put it together on the football field. We'll close it out there. Appreciate y'all rocking with it. Please let it fly in the comment section. Playoff or bust for them Florida Gators. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.